Good morning, everybody. It's lovely to see you and happy launch of the Local Nature Recovery Strategy Day. It's a very exciting day and brilliant that so many of you could join us this morning for a really important occasion. I was working at DEFRA when the idea of local nature recovery strategies was first mooted as part of the Environment Bill. It came from the wildlife trusts. They came into DEFRA and they said, we've got some very, very serious reasons why you should map biodiversity priorities from the bottom up and include it in law. And they said all sorts of serious things like local nature recovery strategies are important for value for money because they'll help us to target our environmental spending better. They said local nature recovery strategies are important for spatial planning because they'll enable you to build more houses in the right place without butting up against nature. They said local nature recovery strategies are important for crowding in private sector investment because they'll give people confidence that they're investing in the right nature assets. All these things were true and convincing, and so local nature recovery strategies became part of the Environment Act. But maybe the most important part of the whole idea of local nature recovery strategies is that they're about hope. They're about bringing people together, uniting different sectors, business, nature conservationists, local government, and giving us the agency and the inspiration to know that even in times when we're constantly hearing how much nature is in trouble, there's something we can do about it. And to give us a shared plan with a map on a page and a statement of priorities that can help us to rally together and actually start to turn things around. And I hope that's the spirit that we all gather today, because the document that's being launched today, the Oxfordshire Local Nature Recovery Strategy, is a document of hope and it is a plan of action. And that's a brilliant spirit. It's maybe strange, we were reflecting earlier, that that spirit of hope comes to Oxford's Natural History Museum, where the most famous symbol is the dodo. But this is also a place of science and inspiration. It's also the place where Lyra came and figured out how to find the alethiometer and make it work and imagine a new future. And that's part of the stuff of today as well. It's about imagining what the future can look like when we take the actions that are here in the Local Nature Recovery Strategy. So my first job today is to say to you guys, let's be brave, let's get stuck in, and let's make sure that this doesn't fall to the same fate that so many plans and strategies fall to and just sit on a shelf, but stays a living document that we all refer to day in, day out, and internalize as part of our ways of working. It's so important here in Oxfordshire because we do start from a pretty low base. We all know the national statistics of decline. In England, 32% of species abundance has been lost since 1970, a third of the abundance of nature lost since 1970. And here in Oxfordshire, we've got some amazing habitats and species from our sort of lowland grasslands and chalk and the fens and some amazing wildlife, but there's been a lot lost too. The extent of our protected areas is less than in other areas of the country. And when you look at some of the designations that we have around us and some of the species that they were designated for, nightingales, adders, turtle doves, you're hard-pressed to go out and find some of those species around Oxfordshire now. So we need this sense of action and inspiration to help guide us forward. And to do that internalizing, to make sure that this stays a living document, there's action for all of us in different forms. So we'll be joined by the Minister later, and we hope that everybody keeps passing the message up to national government that this isn't job done on local nature recovery strategies, but they need to make sure that these are embedded in decision-making across government. They have only the most tenuous link with the planning system at the moment. That needs to be knitted together so nature recovery strategies are part of decision-making. And at the moment, the funding for local nature recovery strategies is only a tiny little premium on biodiversity net gain. There's loads more that you could do by targeting premiums for farming spending, for example, or diverting new nature funds through to local nature recovery strategy areas. In local government, there's plenty to do too. We're really lucky here in Oxfordshire that the plan and development of the local nature recovery strategy has been supported since day one by the Oxfordshire County Council and by the councils. And they've made sure that that mantra of embedding climate and nature action in everything they do holds true in supporting the development of this strategy. So we're very grateful for that. There's definitely more that we can do in the days ahead, though, in making sure that that translates into referring to the priorities and plans here in the strategy when it comes to land use planning and allocation of land for development, when it comes to thinking about how to spend finite funds, when it comes to thinking about how to allocate resources across the council. There's plenty more that can be done there too. And of course, for you and me, well, we all live here. And we can see some of those places that even in the 15 years I've lived in Oxfordshire have started to see loss of biodiversity. We can all be part of turning that around as part of our local communities through brilliant initiatives like Wild Oxfordshire and through the businesses that can support nature's recovery as part of a sound business plan for resilience, for tourism, and for a positive investment in our local economy. So, that's the plan for the day. Let's grasp this plan and make it part of our day-to-day lives, internalize it into our decision-making, and let's use the launchpad of today to come up with a pipeline of projects, some inspirational ideas for where we're going to turn this plan into reality. And it's thanks, I should say, to the brilliant work of some of the gang at the council that we are able to gather with such a great document in front of us this morning. Becky Micklem and Chloe Edwards, who's the brilliant manager of our local nature recovery strategy, have done a fantastic job on this document. And Becky Cheshire and Matt Whitney have done fantastic work supporting the gang and preparing the day. We're extremely lucky to have that team around us. We're also extremely lucky to have such a diverse and energetic community of biodiversity fans here in Oxfordshire, as is shown by the level of enthusiasm and engagement in the process that's got us here today. So have fun today. Don't let the gloom take hold. Let's be imaginative. Let's be hopeful. And we'll start the day by hearing from Councillor Liz Lespman, the leader of Oxfordshire's County Council, who has personally given such a lot of support to the development of this plan. She has to sneak off afterwards. We know that. She's not just legging it. So thank you for being with us, Councillor Lespman. And then we'll hear from Chloe, our brilliant local nature recovery strategy manager, about the contents of the plan and how you can all be involved in the next steps. So have fun, have a brilliant day. Don't think Dodo, think Lyra, and let's make sure it comes true.
This light will switch on if I make it. Yes, there we are, fine. Great, thank you. Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you, Richard, and everybody who's been involved in putting this strategy together. And I understand that as a county, we are way ahead of other people on this. And that's all thanks to you for having come together as a partnership and put this strategy together. I'm glad that the County Council has been able to support this. As Richard has just said, we have always put nature and climate change at the heart of everything that we do, and we will continue to do that, and we will continue to work in partnership with you on this strategy, because, as he has said, we do not want this to sit on the shelf. This is a strategy that must be a live strategy that we adopt in order to be able to make sure that we make our county fit for future generations. And he's mentioned already that, unfortunately, I have to dash off to a Growth Commission meeting, and I was making the point that actually growth without considering what we do about nature recovery is not acceptable to us here in Oxfordshire. We need to think of nature alongside economic growth, not as two separate strands, but as one thing that we bring together. And if we can do that, then we will be doing something that's not just beneficial to the people of our county, but to the country as a whole, because it is so important that we start to do something about this. So it's through our partnership that we've been able to co-create something quite remarkable. And I think today you'll be hearing a lot about everything that's happened so far. And I hope that you will see this as a day that will inspire future work that will help us locally here now, but also make Oxfordshire a place, as I said before, for future generations to live in and be proud of. So it's not just a nice to have. Delivering a resilient, joined-up network of nature is essential, not only for the environment, but also for the economic and social well-being of our communities, and also for the infrastructure that we put together around this county, because, of course, it's not just about making sure that we have nature corridors, it's about ensuring that we encourage people to travel sustainably, that we have the water that we need, and, of course, that we have the land that we need for farming. So all of that is incredibly important. So education is part of this, public health is part of this, and also, as I said before, active travel and, of course, flood mitigation is something that we need to consider as part of this strategy, and supporting our local farmers to create systems that are both economically and environmentally sustainable and help us to achieve food security. And I'm pleased to say that we have a lot of work going on with our local farmers. They've embraced this enthusiastically, and I know that they will continue to do so. By recovering nature in Oxfordshire, we have a real chance to both steward our environment and create real-world enhancements for quality of life, in turn delivering real economic value and building resilience for future generations. If we can deliver local nature recovery using our local nature recovery strategy as a guiding tool, we will help to support both nature and the people of the county in equal measure. So we are leading by example in this work, and the County Council commits to continuing this partnership with you all, so we can all play our part and support each other to coordinate and deliver nature recovery. So today, let us all promise not to let this strategy sit on the shelf. I can say that Oxfordshire County Council will continue to support nature recovery, and I know that the other leaders in Oxfordshire will too, as we have some of our other leaders from other councils here today. And actually, an important part of putting this strategy together has been the collaborative work between the various councils. So it's not just about Oxfordshire County Council. I want to make this clear, because what was the Future Oxfordshire Partnership and is now the Joint Leaders Committee has been absolutely fundamental in putting this together with Chloe and with Becky and with others in the room. Of course, we have to acknowledge that there are also risks ahead. There is the challenge of securing sufficient resources to be able to do what we want to do and to deliver what we want to deliver. And even if we can secure those resources, and Richard made the point that actually the amount of money available to us is relatively modest, very modest in fact, there are questions about what is going to happen next with regard to climate change and the other pressures that we might have on the environment and what that might mean for nature. But we must also acknowledge the clear and obvious risks that exist if we do not commit to going ahead with this and recovering our local environment. The impacts of climate change, particularly on things like water quality, which we know are an issue, the droughts that we've recently experienced, the pressure on farmers and the pressure on food production, which we know are real, and of course that has a massive pressure on food security for the future. We live in very uncertain times in that respect. These are all very real pressures, and we know these issues will worsen unless we are proactive in our ambition to recover nature. Unless we act now on behalf of nature and support landowners to do so, we would most certainly leave Oxfordshire open to a host of enormous challenges. We must therefore continue working together to deliver nature recovery and ensure that nature is not just a topic of conversation, but a lived reality for all of us with regard to the wildlife on our doorsteps, with regard to improving water quality, and an environment that is more resilient to climate change, helping people and businesses and infrastructure alike. Bringing all that together is absolutely key. This isn't just, as I say, a nice to have, something that we can sort of have in one strand here without thinking about the other strands of life in the county. This has to be something holistic that we do together. So I hope that today inspires you to engage further with the local nature recovery strategy, to understand it and use it, and shape the delivery of nature recovery using the strategy to deliver local ambitions, both locally in your own communities, but also county-wide. So just to reiterate that none of this would have been possible without the partnership that we formed and that you represent here today. This should not be seen as the end of a journey, but as a catalyst for new actions that will complement the many years of work that have already been undertaken across the whole of this county. And I'm very proud to be standing here today because I think it's fair to say that we have done a great job together, but there is lots more to do. Days like today keep me confident in our collective resolve. So thank you again for your commitment and your collaboration. And thank you to all those that have been involved in putting the strategy together so far. And let's keep moving forward together in partnership on behalf of the people of this county. Thank you. And I'm sorry that I have to rush off, but I will be taking this message to the Growth Commission. There are a load of people in this room today who really want to see nature as part of our future. Nature recovery is fundamental to what we want to do. So I'll be taking that message to the Growth Commission and to the government. Thank you.
I will be presenting today on behalf of Oxfordshire County Council. My name is Chloe Edwards and I've been working on the strategy now for about 2 years. And this is a tool that can guide the creation of a targeted and resilient network for nature. And I'm really, really pleased to be able to be here today and say that it's ready and let's do it. So I'll be explaining what's in the strategy for those who may not have seen some of the recent changes and also how to use some of it. So there have been 48 authorities across England at the moment creating these, and obviously today we're speaking about Oxfordshire, and there's government guidance behind what we've done and why. So if you'd like to ask me questions later, you may. There have been so many partners involved in this strategy. So whilst Oxfordshire County Council was assigned with the task of producing and leading the creation, we could never have done this without the group of people on the screen here today, but also the people beyond the groups there who have been engaged throughout. So I'm really, really pleased to be able to show you some of the totals now. So we did some different phases of engagement. Early on, we asked people about their priorities, and we collected a huge range of priorities for nature. I'll show you some of those in a second. Where we are there, and that first stage where we were talking to people early on, we held workshops and surveys, and we had more than 1,000 people involved at that point. So there was really strong excitement from people across the county. We then showed people what we had heard and what we intended to do with that, and we had another 200 people join us for a webinar there, and we also invited people to tell us about locations in the county where they were taking action. So where possible, we could align our mapping from an early stage with what people are already doing. So that brought us then to create a draft strategy of our documents and our map, which we then at phase 3 put out to consultation publicly, and we went to 50 plus events with over 700 people to bring the strategy to them and ask, have we got this right? We got lots of feedback, so thank you all. And it just shows how engaged Oxfordshire has been in this work. We had more than 2,000 responses, and that took me a while to get through, but all in all the partners reviewed those responses. We worked on different places that we could change. We modified the map and the documents, and now we're able to say we've finalised the strategy. These are some of the core priorities, actions, and the vision that people kept telling us were important to them. So it's something I like to think about throughout the process of creating the strategy. This was produced quite early on, and we have another little copy there if you'd like to see it later today. But there was some really clear themes that we could not have in the strategy, and connectivity was a huge part of that. It was constantly repeated that connectivity must be central to the production of the map especially, and that we need to create functioning, large, healthy ecosystems here that join to each other, and perhaps using the watercourses as one of the core ways to be able to do that, focusing on improving water quality and then the health for all those species who rely on it. There were also some core species that were picked out by various people as well, and we have a particular species-focused document later. So there is supposed to be a little bit of a header on this one that seems to have gone away, so I'll tell you what it said, if I can remember. So these are the changes as a result of the consultation. So the public consultation happened, we had thousands of responses, And so it is hard to tell you all the things we changed. But in summary, one of the core things was to increase the number of biodiversity actions in urban areas. So there's significantly more mapping now in urban areas on the map, as well as increasing the number of actions the LNRS recommends for urban biodiversity and people's well-being. We then also mapped some additional areas specifically for species. So there's very targeted areas mapped out for certain species. If we don't take actions for them, we expect we will lose them. So adding them to the map has been really key, and noting the exact location for certain specific actions. And I'll show you an example of that later. What else did we do? We did all sorts. So we ensured that the map aligned with the full range of conservation target areas. We added UK HABS codes into our documents and NVC codes, so we could be really specific about the type of habitat we're inviting people to create. We then adjusted the map very specifically based on landowner recommendations. So if people told us about arable reversion fields, we were able to bring that information in. And we also worked closely with our neighbouring authorities, some of whom are here today, so we could work across borders and look at our mapping across borders. So none of the nature recovery network just stops as we get to a different authority border. And we're really pleased to have worked closely with 6 different authorities on that. Oxfordshire is such a core point of connectivity in the country. That was really important to us. Alongside that, we've improved the structure, the functionality of the documents, making them shorter where possible, clarifying the vision of the strategy as well. So to show you today the vision of the strategy, we've pulled out a page that now has the vision stated on it, which is a well-connected, biodiversity-rich, resilient network of nature, resilient into the future, super resilient, restored for the health and well-being of future generations and for nature's own sake. So it brings out all those things that we know we need to achieve. And underneath that, within the document, you can also read principles that have been added, both to enhance what we have to start with, then to create new habitats in connected areas. So when we're creating, we look to connect. And third, then to make space for nature everywhere through homes, school, work, upcoming developments. There needs to be a push that nature is not pushed out of all those different areas. So bear with me on this slide. This is all what's in the strategy. So for those of you, if you're not familiar with the different documents, I'm going to explain today the steps we were asked to take and what that translates to. So step 1, we were asked to map existing areas of particular importance for biodiversity. These are often referred to as core sites, or the sites that are designated as local wildlife sites, SSSIs, SACs, and so on. It also includes irreplaceable habitats. Then we were asked to describe and define the strategy area, which we've done in our description of strategy area document up there. And that's a descriptive side of the strategy. So it talks about what's in Oxfordshire, the land cover, and different actions that we need to achieve. Then we were asked to pull out and agree the LNRS priorities and define the potential measures or actions that need to be taken. And those are listed both as habitats in a set of habitat actions and then a species priorities list as well. So both those documents contain the core actions we need to be delivering across the county and that we will need to be supporting people to deliver across the county. So those 3 documents make up what's called the Statement of Biodiversity Priorities, and this is very standard for all LNRSs. We're asked to create that statement. And then we're asked to create the local habitat map. So having mapped those core sites that are in orange on the screen, I'm not sure how visible they are from here, but you then have the green network in addition to that, which is our step 4. And that is where we were asked to map the areas that could become particularly important for biodiversity in the county. So it's taking all the information we've heard from local people, different data sets, TVERC's environmental records work, and putting all of that together to identify key corridors for biodiversity, taking into account those priorities we heard on connectivity using watercourses and other information. So I'd like to show you a quick example of how the map works. In that map, there are key opportunity areas for nature recovery actions, and I'm going to zoom you in now. So as you zoom into the map tool that we have online, the network becomes more clear, and we're zooming in here towards the Wychwood Forest. So as you go in from a certain point, you go from that green-orange network into a much more detailed mix. So as you get in there, you get all those different actions loading up, and different colours suggest different actions, but you don't have to know all the colours because you can click on any area to get the information. As you then go in, you get the network load up more clearly, and what I'm showing you on the next slide there is a little set of squares in the corner where you can turn on the satellite view or the imagery of what's on the ground. Because I appreciate this slide feels a little bit removed from that. So you can turn that on, you can then see what's on the ground using those 4 squares and the imagery function. If you'd like to turn off any of the data, you can do that on the left-hand side there, and you can toggle things on and off. So now what we can see is we're looking at one of these fields within the forest area. I've turned the data back on, and then a user would click on that, where that cursor is, and by clicking that, the app then provides you with the information about the recommended actions in that location. So here the recommended action is to create areas of calcareous species-rich grassland, but you can see where the circles are in red, there are a number of actions here. So there's 1 of 5, it says, and then you can use the arrows to go between them. So clicking through, alongside the calcareous creation, there's opportunities to create new varied ponds in that location, to create or enhance grassland specifically for the dark green fritillary. So that's about bringing out the plentiful populations of violets, light patches of scrub in that location as well. So you can see this is one of the areas where we've mapped a very specific species action. In addition, you could also be creating a habitat in a way that has a mosaic or matrix of different parts. So it's grassland, but also encouraging those light patches of scrub and trees as well. So you get a sense of the type of habitat we're encouraging there now. Finally, there is across the whole map a recommendation for you to look at the other 2 documents in case there are some unmapped actions you might be keen to take. So within our document, there are a couple of actions like creating scrub or creating traditional orchards. They're very hard to map to specific locations, so they're still things we're recommending people could do, but we haven't always been able to map them. So that's a reminder there for all places that's important to have a look at. So say you've taken that and now you want to find out some more detail from the strategy. We had mapped that dark green fritillary measure, and this is where the detail comes out. So we have a document called the species priorities list, and you could just use the map and create your own actions from that, that's fine. But in the species list, it will give you the detail of what we mean, the type of habitat we're referring to. And there are links in there to organizations that have created core fact sheets or key bits of guidance documents you could use to help you with that planning. So there in the fact sheet I've linked to, it shows you butterfly conservation's ideal type of habitat for this species. And so it's really trying to bring to life what we're inviting you to create. With every single species on the list, there is also a distribution map that was added as a result of the consultation. So you can see the locations in the county where those species have been present recently. You can use that information then to to tailor your own actions. And similarly for the habitat actions that we have mapped, this is where the other list comes into play, we have detailed guidance there as well for what we mean when we say create a calcareous grassland. So that's where you'll find the UK HABS codes or MVC codes. You'll find links to core documents for guidance, and that is where everything is. Finally, exciting new feature as a result of updating the map is that you can draw around any area. So the yellow square there is where I have drawn around a location and then asked it to produce a report of what's mapped there. This tool allows you to then export that information for your own mapping purposes. So I'm very aware some of you work very specifically with community groups and others who want to take that mapping and use it, and this is the real opportunity to do that. So in summary, we have a collaboratively created tool which offers a blueprint for nature. It must be delivered by all of us working together and not by one organisation. It can't be done just with one of us doing this. So this is a guide for all of us to pull from and to target our resources. If this is what we want to create, and people have been saying that, then this is a tool to do that. So you can do other things. You don't have to do exactly what we've suggested on the strategy. These are recommendations as opposed to prescriptions. The habitat actions, as always, some require permissions, and the LNRS doesn't bypass those. So you will still need to make sure you do have permission to take action. And additionally, you'll want to build in perhaps TVERC data searches so that you know and understand the ecology of your area before you take those actions. So we're intending through the strategy to incentivize these actions and support them to happen, not to constrain. The government guidance here is that the main purpose of the strategies is to incentivise things for nature. And it says here that the strategies don't force landowners or managers to take any of these actions. So there's no requirement for landowners to have to deliver them. Instead, the incentive will be to encourage action through creating opportunities for funding and investment, which is what we'll be looking to do in the coming months and years. So there will be a requirement on all public authorities and public bodies to have regard to the LNRS, and that will help bring that into the planning policy and decision making. So what's next is that in 3 to 10 years, all LNRSs across England will be asked to review and republish. We will be able to bring in more local data, more local priorities, and reshape and change these. It's an exciting opportunity, but at least for 3 to 10 years, they are static and won't be changed. So in the meantime, you might wonder what I'm going to get up to, what we'll all be doing. So I will be focusing from the 12 months funding we've recently received from DEFRA. I will be focusing on helping people use and understand the tool and the documents, then also working with others to embed it into local policy and decision making, identifying and supporting strategic projects to develop across the county and deliver their actions, and then building that further. Monitoring and evaluation will then come out of that. So as projects deliver actions, for us to then record what's been happening where. So today I'm really keen to be understanding what everybody needs. I know we do know a lot of that, but if you can continue to work with us to say what your projects need, then I'm going to be looking to try and get that for you. So I really appreciate all your honesty and support today. If you're interested in doing things with the strategy, you could be taking the actions, you could apply for funding or ask others for support. You could prepare actions from the species list and form something around one of those species. You could talk with your neighbours and collaborate across boundaries as well. Supporting and aligning strategies is now something I know that others are starting to do. So they're starting to align their strategies, plans and funding with the LNRS. And this is a great opportunity for us to make this and really avoid it sitting on the shelf, as we've been saying today. Okay, you can also help me embed it into local decision making, please. So what I'd like to say is thank you all so much for joining us today. And from all the partners on the screen and all of you who've engaged with us so far, I'm really excited to be able to celebrate that this is now launched and to work with you in the future. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Liz and Chloe, and just huge congratulations again for the work today. It's been a labour of love for the team and has come out brilliantly. This stuff, these plans, this governance, these targets, they all came from the previous government. The last parliament was a parliament of setting targets and setting frameworks, and it would have been very easy for the incoming government to say, this isn't ours. Let's have another think. Let's start again. Let's do another plan. And to their credit, the government has said that it will meet the targets that were set under the Environment Act, that it will make local nature recovery strategies happen, and that it will improve the environmental improvement plan that was published under the last government. And I guess the message for the minister today is that these aren't something that were sort of artifacts of the previous lot. These are plans that we want to do. It was a Wildlife Trust idea, it's become owned by the whole of Oxfordshire, and now we're ready to take action. And we've heard some of the things that people can be doing right now to make that action happen. But we know we're going to need ongoing support from the government to really make it fly. My day job is prodding the government. We prod them and we push them hard on lots of things. And there are some really big areas at the moment where getting it wrong could stand in the way of local nature recovery strategy implementation. So tomorrow, the Planning and Infrastructure Bill will come back to Parliament, where the government will be looking at amendments made by the Lords to safeguard species and irreplaceable habitats. And we hope that the government will think carefully as the local nature recovery strategies come out and all this optimism is there about building these things in from the bottom, about how it can make sure that its new approach to planning and development respects the fact that irreplaceable habitats and species can't simply be swapped away in return for some cash, but they need proper proper safeguards. So we're really keen to prod the government further in that direction. And biodiversity net gain too. That one's up for new decisions with consultations on taking out small sites from the system. That's one of the few areas where there's actual money for implementation of the local nature recovery strategies, because if biodiversity net gain is delivered in a local nature recovery strategy priority area, it gets an uplift on the amount of money that developers get in return for their habitat enhancement. So that link is crucial, and pulling the rug out from the biodiversity net gain market now by taking out 97% of planning applications would be a real mistake. So I say that by way of admitting that we're quite proddy on government, and there are some big decisions coming up. But we also know, every time we talk about those crunchy policy decisions, that we have friends within government. And that's the segue to introducing the Minister today, because I've seen Minister Creagh in action on environmental issues for 15 years or so now, seeing her in action first as chair of the Environmental Audit Committee, holding the then government to account with a sharp but always witty tongue to make sure that they listened to the committee. And since then, she's kept the environmental flame alive. And you have to know and recognise that among those 650 odd MPs, there are some that will remain committed to environmental issues. And I'm pleased that we have a minister in DEFRA that we can say that's true of, the Parliamentary Under Secretary of State, Mary Creagh. And it's been my job over the last week to introduce her a few times, and so I'm varying it up by saying, we're really grateful to have you here in Oxfordshire today, Mary. We want to make this plan happen, and so we're looking to you to make sure that it keeps featuring in government policy and make sure that we actually can deliver this plan and turn Oxfordshire greener for 3 to 10 years' time when Chloe comes back. Over to you, Minister.
Oh, well, thanks so much, Richard. And I don't mind a bit of challenge. I can give as good as I get, as you know. So thank you very much. And thanks for the invite to come here today. It's definitely winning the prize for the best location in this incredible building. I studied here for 3 years in the 80s, showing my age. And not once did I step inside, because every time I came in, it was all a bit dusty, fusty, musty. And I had a wonderful walk up and down the sort of looking at the dinosaur skeletons this morning and just reflecting on nature, geology, learning, and all of the things that lie beneath our feet. So thank you for having me here to launch this Oxfordshire Local Nature Recovery Strategy. What an amazing achievement, and what a step change it will be for environmental improvement in this county. The museum here showcases the variety of life that we are part of on this planet. And as I say, I lived here for 3 years. I spent more time outside the lecture halls than in, I have to say. It's where I first learnt to punt. It's where I first learnt to row. And yeah, it wasn't always, I did more punting than rowing, I have to say. I like the horizontal nature of somebody else punting. And the ability to drink wine on the river was excellent. But enjoying those ancient meadows, Port Meadow, those ancient precious landscapes and woodlands. And the dodo outside, however, reminds us of everything that we stand to lose if we do not take action to protect our natural world. We need large-scale restoration of our environment. And that's why just last week we announced the creation of a new national forest for the Oxcam Arc, so the new Oxford to Cambridge railway that is being built. My brother wittily calls it the brain train. You can have that one for free, courtesy of the second Creagh. So it's one of 3 new national forests that we're creating as part of our £1 billion investment in tree planting and support for the forestry sector over the course of this Parliament. This new national forest will show how nature recovery can work hand in hand with housing and infrastructure delivery. Trees and green spaces designed into development from the outset. The forest will be created alongside thousands of new jobs, affordable homes, and investment in science and railway infrastructure. It's one of our 3 new national forests, which will all be a win-win for nature and the economy, creating jobs for local people, boosting nature's recovery, and building prosperity. The first of those forests, I planted a tree and launched it. The Western Forest begins up in the Forest of Dean, stretches round the Cotswolds, Gloucester, and down to the Mendip Hills. So a lot of flood prevention, restoration of ancient woodland happening in that forest. And we've announced the competition for our 3rd forest, which will be in either the Midlands or the north of England. But in the same way as the great the Labour government after World War II created that vision of garden cities, this government wants to create these forest towns and cities, so building woodlands alongside people. It's a clear example of nature recovery powering our growth mission and supporting the delivery of our plan for change. We all know there is a biodiversity crisis across the world. And today in England, we have only an estimated we've got an estimated 1/3 of the species that we had. We've lost 1/3 of the species that we had in 1970. We had a discussion before I came here. It said we've got an estimated 67% of the species abundance that we had in 1970. I was like, what does that actually mean? It means we've lost 1/3 of the species abundance. And actually, that is a tragedy for our country. Because as a child growing up in Coventry, I remember seeing murmurations of starlings from my city bedroom window, and I haven't seen them at all in the last 20 years. I remember the thrill of running down the hills in Burton Dasset, my legs flying, heart racing, surrounded by green. And that memory of freedom and joy and exalting yourself in nature is what really drives me as Minister for Nature. To ensure every child in Coventry, every child in Oxford, whatever their postcode, whatever their social status, can make memories like that. But we know access to nature is unequal. And that's why we want to open up nature for people and build nature, to plant nature closer to where people live. This government is planning to finally complete the King Charles III coastal path next summer, we hope. At 2,674 miles, it will be the longest continuous waymarked route in the world. So, yeah, I was like, I'm really pleased about that, actually. And it's going to open up thousands of hectares of coastal habitat that are going to be open access spaces. So we're really thinking deeply with civil servant colleagues about how we can, what can we do with this coastal margin? I'll be chatting to, Richard's got an idea. Richard always has an idea. So we'll be thinking and talking about what we can do with that. But that's part of what we're doing nationally to drive forward delivery of these ambitious targets to halt the decline in species abundance by 2030 and to create and restore over 500,000 hectares of habitats outside of protected sites by 2042. We're also committed to protecting 1/3 of the UK's land and sea by 2030 to ensure our most important and wildlife-rich habitats benefit from long-term conservation and management for nature. Stretching targets, but together we can do it. That's why having a clear spatial blueprint for how we can take the most effective action is so vital. So at national level, we will soon publish our revised environmental improvement plan, our long-term plan for improving the natural environment and people's enjoyment of it. It will clearly describe the actions we need to take, who is responsible, and how they stack up to meet those environmental goals. They'll help us restore nature, improve environmental quality, create a more circular economy, maintain environmental security, and improve people's access to nature. So when you see your food waste bin collection, I don't know if you have them here in Oxford and Oxfordshire. Do you have food waste collection already? You do, very good. We don't in Coventry. So I was talking to the Scouts last night and I was saying, when you see your food waste collection, you need to play your part. That is how we are going to meet on, is part of how we're going to meet our net zero targets. In Coventry, all the food waste goes into the bin, it goes into incinerators. And those Scouts last night could see that it was better to use that food waste in an anaerobic digester for digestate that we can use as fertiliser and biogas. And they could really get that. These 12-year-old kids were really totally behind this. So this is how we create, you know, communities that understand missions and are part of our missions. While our national effort sets the direction, we know real change happens through you. And local nature recovery strategies will be so important in taking forward these actions because they identify and prioritise the areas for nature recovery and nature-based solution. And so very soon, hopefully by the end of March, every place in England will be covered by a local nature recovery strategy. So we'll have this map, this mosaic of what we're doing, how we're all pulling in the same direction to meet our national targets. So Oxfordshire, you are the 16th LNRS to be published in England, and a massive congratulations to the County Council as responsible authority and to all partners here who've been involved for a standout example of how national ambition can be translated into local action. It's been great to hear about how the local authorities, the Local Nature Partnership have worked closely with DEFRA Group, landowners, farmers, conservation organisations, schools and businesses to create this strategy. And these partnerships are the foundation of successful nature recovery. An incredible response to your public consultation, over 2,000. I feel like I should have some sort of prize for LNRS. I feel like we need to get into some competitive bidding wars here, but it feels a bit mean to be setting out prizes in the middle of the process. So maybe we'll just we'll do a little thing. We can do a little thing in Parliament for most number of foundation responses, most number of partners. But basically, you've had this incredible response, and it shows how local people really cherish the landscapes around them. So your LNRS is a call to action to all corners of the county, from the Chilterns to the Cotswolds to the North Wessex Downs, right down to the green network of narrow verges, pocket parks, riverbanks and household gardens. Oxfordshire is crammed with some amazing and precious habitats. And we've seen some inspiring success stories here for iconic species like otters and bitterns in recent years returning to Oxfordshire, and I should say to the Coventry Canal that runs through my constituency, a more unlikely place for otters you cannot imagine. I saw my first ever kingfisher on a boat travelling down that canal with the Canal and Rivers Trust. So not what I was expecting in my very inner city seat. But your strategy sets out the actions that you're going to take to help these precious species and habitats, identifying where nature recovery can be targeted for benefits beyond biodiversity. In particular, you talk about local priorities like water quality and flood prevention through nature-based solutions. Through creating and restoring habitats in one location, the benefits will be felt upstream and downstream. By improving the condition of Oxfordshire's iconic rivers, we can protect species, reduce flooding, and provide places for people to safely swim, paddle and splash. And as the mother of a kayaker who had one very memorable night throwing up all the way through the night after a day on the River Thames, I'm very keen that we clean up our rivers, lakes and seas. It's absolutely very, very close to my heart. So I'm eager for the responsible authorities behind LNRSs to take the lead on their delivery. This government is devolving powers to local areas on a range of matters, empowering local leaders to get on with improving local areas. And in the English Devolution White Paper, we set out our intention that strategic authorities should have an environment and climate leadership role. I remember when I was chairing the Environmental Audit Select Committee, we were looking at adaptation, so we did flooding and we did invasive species, and I was like, right, this year we're going to do overheating, and we did it during the Beast from the East, and it was like, we started this off in January, and I was saying to my officials on the committee, I was like, look, why has nobody written to us about overheating? And he said, Chair, look outside. And to be fair, it was 2 foot of snow on Westminster Bridge. I had a great time cycling through that to get to work. And I said, yeah, but this is the whole El Nino, La Nina effect. We're going to have a massive heat wave this year. And I remembered those words as I launched our overheating strategy when it was 36 degrees, then the hottest day of the year. I could feel the sweat pouring off me in College Gardens where we were talking to the TV. But at that point, what we revealed was that actually local government did not have a plan to address overheating. And so we couldn't get anyone from local government to talk to us, from the LGA, from anywhere. And given that we have urban heat island effects and that we're going to have hotter, drier summers, we're still in drought in some parts of the country. You wouldn't think so as we trudge through the rain this morning. But we are still in drought and we are coming into the flooding season. So we've got these, that's never happened before. So as we deal with these changing climate patterns, we have to make sure that local leadership can address both the flood and the drought issues we face. LNRS delivery is going to be at the heart of this climate adaptation piece as well. So we're going to need to continue the conversation with landowners about their role, design projects that will get the most out of funding while maximising the benefits for people, nature and the economy. It means using LNRSs to shape development and economic growth in the area, quicker decisions on development and infrastructure design and location, and working in partnership with other local authorities, conservation organisations, businesses, landowners, DEFRA officials. Responsible authorities can drive impactful nature recovery in a way that works for their local growth, health and wealth. LNRSs will work across different policies to protect and enhance the most important habitats and to fund new habitat creation. They will work alongside the development and planning system. And yes, the bill is coming back to Parliament tomorrow. And yes, Richard, we will be looking at those Lord's amendments. Local planners will take account of the LNRS in preparing their plans and making development decisions. Biodiversity Net Gain will make sure development and nature recovery can work in harmony, and the Oxfordshire LNRS will unlock this opportunity by guiding the delivery of Biodiversity Net Gain to the most important areas, making sure we get the most out of these investments. For these policies to be successful, government must lead by example. And I'm proud of how DEFRA has contributed to every LNRS across the country to make sure they're high quality, and we've pioneered new ways of working between government and national government and local government. And we want to look to LNRSs to inform how we carry out our regulatory advice and grant giving functions. But meeting our ambitious targets will also require us to bring in private finance to nature recovery. We are setting clear and consistent standards through the Task Force on Nature-related Financial Disclosures, creating opportunities for blended finance like the Big Nature Impact Fund. And through programmes like Local Investment in Natural Capital and the Natural Environment Investment Readiness Fund, we're developing green finance capacity and capabilities in local areas. So LNRS provides an opportunity for local leaders to bring in more private finance, because county-wide projects can offer the scale to investors that individual projects cannot. And you can work with neighbouring areas to scale up even further. The partnership that prepared this strategy, is that my time up? Yeah, I've gone way over, sorry about that. Can now start to turn hyperlocal projects into landscape scale change. So I'd like to close by let me conclude, only 6 more pages to go. I'd like to close by recognising the huge amount of work that's gone into this strategy, by congratulating you all for showing up. I know how difficult these things are, and there's different competing pressures on our land, and our land use framework that we hope to publish early next year will certainly help guide those decisions. But there's been a huge amount of thought crowded in from individuals and organisations, many, many, many hours of volunteer time. Thank you for your dedication to restore and protect our gorgeous landscape here in Oxfordshire, to lay the foundations for a greener, more resilient recovery for nature. And as we move into our critical delivery phase, and I'm heading off to Brazil this weekend to talk about what we're doing internationally to play our part, we need every community, every town, every village, every person to play their part, because together we can and we will restore nature for our children and generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister. I have a very vivid memory in the Local Nature Recovery Partnership of saying, right, guys, how are we going to make our nature recovery strategy the best? To win one of those prizes. And I remember Simon over there saying, Richard, it's not a competition. But we all know it is, really. That was very helpful indeed. Thank you, Minister. And there were some hints there about where we might see that continuing commitment to nature recovery strategies in future. Water reforms feels really important. Next year's bill, crucial opportunity to make those nature-based solutions target towards local nature recovery strategies. We heard hints about the future of private sector payments, and that disclosure and polluter pays regime feels absolutely crucial too. So those opportunities to keep making local nature recovery strategies living documents linked to national policy and spending are the ones that we'll be really looking forward to in the days ahead. And we're very grateful for your time and input this morning. It's time now, folks, for a short break. So you've got until 11:30 for tea, coffee, networking. And we hope that you'll return promptly at 11:30, please, for what we hope will be a very exciting panel discussion to come. Thank you so much, everybody, this morning.